if you can come up with a great melody and you can come up with a structure for your piece that never gets tiresome, then that's like 99% of the work there towards getting you a great piece. I think melody is one of these things that's underemphasized these days, and that's where I choose to invest most of my creative energy, in coming up with themes. What immediately drew me to the game was the IP itself. The world that you guys were creating was really exciting to me, largely because of the sort of the musical opportunities that it offered up in writing the score. It takes place in this alternate universe in the early 20th century. And that was a period of time when there's a lot of confluence of a lot of musical ideas. It was sort of the height of Romanticism, but it's sort of the early modernist sort of era as well. Jazz was becoming a thing. There was like a rich folk music tradition that the world was sort of reveling in. That sort of offered up some opportunities to write a certain type of music that hadn't really been presented to me before. So I thought, okay, let's do this. As the process went on, and as the schedule went on, it got to the point where I knew that I couldn't tackle the game myself. And so I called up Alex, who has actually worked with me for almost 2 decades now in a variety of different capacities, largely as an arranger and a programmer, but also sometimes helping co-compose things. And I said, there's this really cool game, Aether Iron.
Yeah, when he brought up the game, I looked into it. I really appreciated the world building. And I thought, this is a game where I'd like to be there. I'd like to be in that world they've created. I love alternative history. I like the story. And then my next thought was, this was a good musical opportunity to write in a style that basically doesn't come up in games. This is like a really rare opportunity. And I think we're both big fans of the hyper romantic, the jazz influence, the noir style. These were all very special, so I thought we should dive right into this one.
Our process for tackling the game score largely is something that we've sort of honed over the years on other franchises, like PGA Tour, for example. A lot of it starts with just sitting down at a piano and just throwing a bunch of ideas out there and sifting through them later on. And over time, maybe one particular melodic idea stands out amongst the rest, and collectively we just sort of say, okay, this could be the main theme, and why don't we try iterating on this? I throw them to Alex and I say, what do you think? And he sort of picks through them and says, this is great, let's do this. He gives me a lot of feedback on them. And a lot of times he bounces them back and says, what if we add this B section to this? Or, and so it's almost like a co-writing process a lot of times where maybe I'll start something, but Alex will iterate on it. It kind of goes back and forth. Alex did a very big mock-up of one of my piano sketches. We ran it by you guys. You thought, okay, this has promise, let's do this. Then I took it back from him, and then I rewrote it again, and then just spent a lot of time working on that one piece, which has kind of been my thing in recent years, just focusing on the main theme. I've always been very melodically and structurally oriented. I like to say that if you can come up with a great melody and you can come up with a structure for your piece that never gets tiresome, then that's like 99% of the work there towards getting you a great piece. I think melody is one of these things that's underemphasized these days. I think we've really, in the scoring world, gotten away from that a lot. And I understand, directors have their reasons for doing that. But I think there's nothing that creates a hit that lasts through time, that spans decades, than writing a great tune. And that's where I choose to invest most of my creative energy, in coming up with themes.
Like, how did you meet and start working together?
Yeah, the backstory for that is that I was a freshman at college, and I asked around any alumni who are in film music, and yes, there's one. There's only one. Hope it works out for you. So, Chris, I didn't know he'd already written for Civ 4, and I grew up playing all of the Civ games, and that was a great start. So I just sent him a message and was interning that summer. A couple summers later, I guess, I came to work for a while, actually at a studio.
Yeah.
And that's when you were, I think, wrapping up or had just released the first album.
Yeah, I think so, right?
Yeah.
Wait, I think some of the first game projects we did together were actually for Disney, if I'm not...
Yeah. I was arranging some stuff even back then.
Yeah.
Stuff you're
And then on Civilization 6, I brought you on board to do the arrangements for the closing victory cinematics.
Yeah.
cinematics. I wrote the main theme and the opening cinematic, and then we had this opportunity to get Alex on board. So it's like, we got these 5 30-second things, take my main theme to 5 different versions of it. Gradually, it's just like, we want to do more and more. And
He's just been like 20 years at this point.
We're getting there.
we're getting there, yeah.
Old enough to vote.
Chris, why did you choose to use a real orchestra for
The main theme. I chose to use a real orchestra because I like to write for real orchestra. I mean, my composing process is actually, my background is way more classical. And the way I compose is actually probably different from a lot of people who score games and films, in that I write straight into a full orchestral score, like notated. You know, when you're notating it, you might as well actually just hire a real orchestra to play the thing live. And so we did a session in Macedonia with an orchestra there. We're mixing it now, and it sounded great.
any specific influences you were drawing on for this game?
Well, I started off with kind of more recent, as in maybe the 70s, films that draw on the noir era, Goldsmith at Chinatown, and then LA Confidential. And then I did a deep dive on actual film from the 40s and 30s, in fact, and discovered a few names I didn't even know before, some films I'd never heard of, and just immersed myself in that. And pretty soon you start thinking in terms of these kind of weird chords and abrupt changes and soaring melodies, and you kind of immerse yourself in that first and then come out with some ideas. And then actually the process mirrors our internal process. I start sending a lot of ideas to the creative team and see what works for people, what doesn't, and that informs the next batch of new ideas that we kind of experiment with.
I think I tended to inject a lot of sort of a lush romantic string thing to a lot of it, and certainly putting the main theme together, it was very much operatic in a way. Like it just a lot of soaring strings on sort of an orchestrational level. There was just sort of like moments of either Italian or German influence in terms of how like I was writing the counterpoint. There was definitely more of a classical influence that I brought to the main theme.
And it was really important that the creative direction was there is no such thing as too much, too over the top. More is more. And I think sometimes we really like to hear that, because sometimes it's in vogue to do the less is more approach. And this was all like more lush, more dramatic, louder.
The world, floating cities in the clouds, is so beautiful. I think it gets evoked by the music so much, but it's actually a rather dark story. It's a dark world and a beautiful place, and I think the music actually does reflect that. Tell us about the dynamic layered music system.
One of the reasons I was really attracted to this franchise, not only because of the world that you guys created, but also because I thought, well, maybe this is our chance to finally do something that really kind of is exciting on sort of the programmed level, that is adaptive, that is intricate, and takes musicality as its driving force for, arranging all these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. And so when I called Alex, I was like, I got this idea. It's a cool game, but why don't we think about doing it like this? I think he's like, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's try it,
Yeah, some parts are layered, and then some parts are meant to kind of dynamically switch based on what's going on in the game. And when we first started, I think, the order was to write music for this place and this person, and that's all pretty normal. But we thought we might want to go for something that flows a bit better. This is, storytelling. It's kind of like you're living a novel, you're playing a novel. And we wanted something that could accompany that well and kind of underscore the experience rather than sort of abruptly shift based on where you've gone in the game and maybe take you out of the moment. So we wrote music in such a way that it can musically naturally kind of wrap up. Let's say if you've ended a conversation and change mood based on what you're doing next, as opposed to, again, just fading out and starting over again and then looping. We have music that is written in phrases and kind of like chunks that come to a close before moving on and a new piece starts.
Usually, especially for the games that I'm known for, like Civilization, it's like, Chris, give us a 4-minute, theme song, and it's just a piece of music, and then that's it. I don't have as much experience doing the sort of adaptive soundtrack stuff, but Alex is very proficient with a lot of things, and he has a very sort of clever way of thinking about musical phrases as well. I trusted him for like 20 years now to sort of like finish a lot of my musical ideas. And this was a great project to bring him on to tackle this particular technical challenge.
And the idea is not to start at the same spot every time in a piece of music.
Yeah.
We're talking about the influences, the inspiration from the 30s and 40s. It really helps that style can be very angular sometimes, borderline atonal. So you can sort of work that into the writing so that it's not so crazy when you end one piece and start another one, because that's how the music goes anyway.
Giving a game that's got like 20 or 30 hours of gameplay time, and there's really only about an hour of music in it, but that's able to be spread out and not just be repeats of the same pieces of music, but you're getting different variations. Like, how did you get into doing video games, Chris?
So my story for how I got into video games is my old college roommate became a video game designer. In fact, he had co-designed Civilization 3. And then I ran into him at our 5-year reunion. We caught up and he asked me what I was doing. And I said I was actually working in movies a lot. I was doing a lot of ghostwriting at the time in movies. And he said, are you ever interested in getting into video games? And I said, yes. And I'd actually played Civ as well from childhood. And a couple of months later, I got an email from him that said, basically, I took some of the music you recorded with your college a cappella group, which was sort of like African choral music. I was the music director of the group, and I produced their album and did all the arrangements. And he said, I took that CD and I actually placed it on the development build of Civilization 4, and everyone loves the sound. And we're wondering whether we can basically hire you to make a new piece that has African choral vocals or orchestra, some world percussion. And of course I said yes. And so I wrote the song called Baba Yetu, choral piece for the opening menu of Civilization 4. And it became kind of a hit, actually, and it put me on the map in the game world. And then a few years later, I decided I wanted to branch out more into writing concert music and releasing my own albums, basically. And so I re-recorded Baba Yetu with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and the Soweto Gospel Choir. And when that album came out, it actually won a couple of Grammys. And one of those Grammys was for the song Baba Yetu, which made Baba Yetu the first piece of video game music ever to win a Grammy. And that really just sort of like solidified sort of my place in both the video game world, but also as a new voice in the concert music world. And ever since then, I've sort of been developing both. These days, I'm doing more concert music just because creatively that's where my heart is now, writing music that's music for its own sake. But games have been a great place to work as well, because largely speaking, you get a lot of creative freedom working on games. You don't have to avoid dialogue, as long as you sort of get the tone of it right and do what's needed. It's a very sort of hands-off place to work as a composer. So I've really enjoyed working in games.
And Chris, what are you actually working on these days? What's next that you can talk about?
I'm releasing an album on Friday. I'm recording another album, which is my completion of Puccini's Turandot. And that's going to be released right before the Olympics because it will be used during a figure skating routine at the Olympics. And then I'm writing a piano concerto for performance at the Lincoln Center on July 1st. And then I'm working on my next opera. So I've just got and of course, writing this. So it's just been a pretty full slate.
Alex, what you got?
Wow. And after that, mine's not going to be good material. To be honest, probably just a constant stream of Chinese mobile games. But hey, it's fun. It's bite-sized.
How has your style changed over time? If it has
I just had to be kind of a jack of all trades, chameleon. I don't know how it's evolved. I would just say that as time goes on, you get better with more styles because you have to be. Advertising was a really big thing for me, starting 10 years ago, maybe, to just force you to try things out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I think over time, maybe you just sort of gravitate or get the option to choose the things that are more in your wheelhouse, which is what this would be, I would say. Getting to focus on, rich harmony. Then I'd say workflow improves, but I don't know if a personal style of mine has existed or changed over time.
My core values and the core things that I do in music have not changed. But as my career has progressed, the projects that I choose to do have focused my sound in a certain direction. Early on, I actually started in advertising as well, where it was like, okay, here's this international campaign we're doing, and we need 20 pieces of music that are 30 seconds long, and they're in 20 different styles, Like, we need a bossa nova here, we need a hip hop piece here, we need this, whatever. And I always try to find a way to write the hook, because I think the hook is what sets apart, great music from music that's sort of forgettable. But over time, after a while, you get tired of writing 30-second chunks of music. And so you start saying no to the advertising jobs, and you find other things to do, like writing game music, which allows you to write longer pieces of music that have the structural element to them. Over time, those sorts of pieces, for me, became me choosing to do longer and longer pieces. A lot of that, you only get opportunities in the concert music world, where they say, we want a 12-minute choral orchestral piece, or, we want a 45-minute, oratorio or something like that. And recently, it's been more like, okay, we want a 2.5-hour opera from you. So now it gives me a chance to write in the classical medium that is the most melodic, in a way, and to start thinking structurally across 2.5 hours and not 30 seconds. And that's very exciting to me. So the core values have always been the same. It's just that I'm now picking the projects where I get to flex those core values on a much bigger scale.
Was it?
Thank you guys for wonderful interview.
Aether Iron, wish list now.